Okay, we are here for Chapter 8, and this is Securing the Republic, and we'll be talking about the time period from 1790 to 1815, a very important 25 years as our founding fathers were trying to carry on the legacy of the revolution and implement democracy and really get this nation moving. So it really was a great experiment. No democratic countries existed in the world, and the United States was trying to get that going. All right, so the leaders of this new government. Under the first presidency of Washington, his vice president was John Adams. Secretary of State was Thomas Jefferson. Secretary of the Treasury was Alexander Hamilton. And then the Chief Justice of the new Supreme Court was John Jay. And from the beginning, there was already a division amongst the leaders of this cabinet. We're going to see Hamilton's financial plan, and Jefferson has his own financial plan, which were very different from one another. So Hamilton's plan, he's copying the same ideas that the British had. Let's make America a strong military and commercial power, a national bank that can hold government funds, make loans, turn profits for stockholders. They wanted a whiskey tax to generate revenue, and also a tariff to develop factories within this country and really boost the economy. Jefferson's vision was pretty much the opposite. He wanted to expand west, have a republic of independent farmers, not to be industrialized, not have a strong central government, not have a powerful military. He believed that a powerful government would endanger freedom. So a deal was struck, the Jefferson-Hamilton bargain. Hamilton's plan was adopted, and then to make the Jeffersonian faction happy, particularly in the South, the nation's capital was going to be built within the boundaries of the South in Washington, D.C. So as soon as Washington takes office, there's already trouble over in Europe. The French Revolution began in 1789, and Thomas Jefferson believed it was a victory for self-government everywhere. Alexander Hamilton, pro-British that he was, believed that this revolution was inviting anarchy, so he sided with the British. And Washington tried to stay neutral as much as he could. He's going to warn Americans to stay out of Europe's affairs, not get tangled in. But as we'll see in this chapter, it's going to be almost impossible. One incident that's going to turn the pro-French faction away will be the Genet affair, where a Frenchman was expelled from the United States. He wanted American ships to attack the British. And then John Jay's treaty back in 1794 is essentially going to cancel any French alliance that was in place. So as I mentioned before, we're going to see a division amongst the leadership, and that's apparent with these emerging political parties. We'll have the Federalists, Washington and Hamilton. They're tied to Britain. Their following is the nation's elite, and they have a strong support in the North. The Republicans, also known as the Democratic Republicans, led by Jefferson and Madison, obviously opposed to Hamilton's economic program, strong support in the South. An early incident that tested the executive powers was the Whiskey Rebellion. Down in Pennsylvania, farmers tried to prevent the collection of the tax. Washington sent troops to enforce the law, even led the troops, and this set a precedent for future presidents and for the nation. The laws must be followed no matter what, even if you don't approve of them. All we're talking about is men, men, men. Women in the Republic. Women are still fighting for equality and for their rights. Over in England, Mary Wollstonecraft published A Vindication of the Rights of Women, where she's arguing that rights should be given to them. Judith Sargent Murray, women should have equal access to education. And if women seemed intellectually inferior to men, as it was said, that's because the opportunities were not there for them to learn. There's Mary Wollstonecraft. On to the Adams presidency. Like I said before, Washington's farewell address. He's warning against political parties and having the country divided. And he's also urging Americans to avoid Europe's power politics. In the election of 1796, we saw John Adams running with Thomas Pinckney, the Federalists. running versus Jefferson and Aaron Burr on the Republicans. However, the 12th Amendment hadn't been passed yet, and simply first person with the most votes is president, person with the second most votes is the vice president. So we're going to see Thomas Jefferson, who is a different political party, as Adams' vice president. America and France are going to fight in a quasi-war, fought in the last half of the 1790s, where we're going to see American and French ships battling in the Caribbean. One of the dark marks on the Adams presidency was the Alien and Sedition Acts, and these were aimed at the Republican newspapers, the editors of these newspapers who were blasting the Federalists and gearing up for the election of 1800. So the Adams administration was making it difficult for them to strike back. So they extended the time to become a citizen from 5 to 14 years. That's the alien part of the act. They could deport people that were considered dangerous. And the Sedition Acts authorized the prosecution of any publications critical of the government, which of course was a direct violation of the First Amendment. The Virginia and Kentucky resolutions, written by Madison and Jefferson respectively, denounced these acts as violations of the First Amendment. And these resolutions were written anonymously, and it's ironic that the Vice President of the United States is blasting his own government that instituted these acts. Jefferson even took it so far as to say that states are allowed to stop enforcement of any laws within their own borders if the laws are unjust. And we're going to see this issue come up again as we build towards the Civil War. Also, we have the Haitian Revolution, which started in the 1790s. Slaves defeated British and French forces throughout that decade, and finally were declared an independent nation in 1804, and Southern slaves will be inspired by this. In 1800, Gabriel Prosser, a Virginia slave, arranged a plot to capture official hostages, demand abolition. They were going to capture Governor James Monroe and hold him for ransom. Unfortunately for the slaves, the plot was discovered, and the slaves were quickly rounded up, captured, and executed. Okay, here we have an image of the Adams and Jefferson election that we mentioned before. Okay, so the election of 1800, we have, again, Adams, the Federalist, running against Jefferson, who's the Republican, and because of the earlier incident where we had candidates from two different parties winning, each political party came up with a plan. The Federalists, one vote would go to Adams, one vote would go to Pinckney as a ticket, but one person was to vote for John Jay so that Pinckney would come in second to Adams. Same thing with the Republicans. One vote would go to Jefferson, one vote would go to Burr, and one person was supposed to vote not for Aaron Burr. That didn't happen, so we're going to see a tie for the presidency between Jefferson and Burr. So this is going to go to the House of Representatives, and Alexander Hamilton, with his considerable influence, is going to pull the votes to Jefferson, making him president and Burr vice president. And as a result of this, they're going to have to pass the 12th Amendment, where electors are going to vote by ballot for presidential and vice presidential candidate, and it's only one vote for both. This changes that earlier method. And ironically, Jefferson's going to win the whole election over Adams by getting all of the South's electoral votes because of the 3/5 compromise. So this institution of slavery is going to give the South so much power and defeat the Northern candidate, John Adams. One of the most famous Supreme Court cases in history is Marbury versus Madison. And on John Adams' last night as president, he is going to sign a bunch of commissions putting Federalists in power and giving them a whole bunch of jobs with the new Republican party that's in power. So Secretary of State James Madison is going to simply not sign the papers giving them their jobs. One of the justices that is going to sue, and that is Marbury. So the Marshall Court, John Marshall, the Supreme Court Chief Justice, is going to establish the right of the Supreme Court to determine whether an act of Congress violates the Constitution. So the Supreme Court is going to exert its power and be the law of the land with this decision. So this power is known as judicial review. Jefferson's crowning achievement is the Louisiana Purchase, which was acquired from Napoleon and the French for $15 million in 1803. It doubles the size of the United States. Territory stretches from the Mississippi River all the way to the Rocky Mountains. And this went against what Jefferson's philosophy was. He was a strict constructionist. He believed that you only have the powers that are spelled out in the Constitution. But he felt this opportunity was too good to pass up, and it's going to eventually lead to the United States becoming a major power. So we can see this land here is Louisiana, a huge chunk of land, and that's going to further complicate the matter of slavery as these new territories eventually become eligible for statehood. Jefferson had to fight the Barbary pirates, not literally, but the North African Barbary states were attacking European and American shipping in the Mediterranean. We would pay them tribute, so when they asked for an increase in tribute, Jefferson refused to pay, and the war is going to last until 1804, where we'll get some free shipping with the treaty, but then they'll start attacking us again, and we'll have to fight them a second time after the War of 1812. So 1803, same year as Louisiana, we're going to see France and Britain are at war. Both are imposing blockades. And the British have a policy of impressment where any American ship trying to go to the French to trade, those American sailors were taken by the British and forced into their navy. Jefferson enacted an embargo to try to stop the blockades, but it didn't, and it devastated the nation's ports. And it's going to severely cripple the economy. Now James Madison will be the next president after Jefferson, elected in 1808, and he's going to be feeling the pressure for war. A group of young congressmen, known as the War Hawks, are calling for a war. They saw this as an opportunity. We can take Florida, we can take Canada, we can expand the United States. Also a chance to defend free trade and end Europe's power over America. Here's an image of denouncing the embargo. As you can see here, oh, this cursed, oh, grab me. It's embargo backwards. Ooh. Damn it, how he nicks him. You can see the feeling of hatred towards this embargo. Now, for the War of 1812, which is about to start, which we're going to be fighting the British, the British were encouraging Native Americans to attack the United States. And a couple famous Native American brothers, Tecumseh and Tenskwatawa, they're going to refuse to sign treaties with whites, and they're going to advocate fighting back against the federal government. In 1810, Tecumseh is going to organize attacks on frontier settlements. Future President William Henry Harrison becomes famous at the Battle of Tippecanoe for his defeat of the Native Americans there. So the War of 1812, the Federalists are against the war. Southern and Western representatives supported it, and it was a nasty war. The British are going to stop American invasions in Canada. They will attack up and down the rivers, and even in Connecticut, they're going to go up the Connecticut River and burn 7 ships there and destroy New London. They're going to burn the Washington, D.C., the White House down. They're actually going to have dinner where James Madison was going to be sitting down to eat, and then they'll burn it down to the ground. The Battle of New Orleans, even though the war was technically over, the peace treaty had been signed, word didn't get out yet. This is going to make General Andrew Jackson a hero in America, defeats the British resoundly, suffers very few casualties, and